Welcome back to another edition of Celtics Roundtable on the CLNS Media Network. CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. Evan Valenti alongside Zaire and Jonathan Ignal. Again, rejoined, recurring guest. It's the play-by-play man for the Boston Celtics for 98.5 The Sports Hub alongside Cedric Maxwell. You can hear him as a part of the Boston Celtics radio network. He's one of the voices of the Celtics. It is Sean Grande. And Sean, we've been talking a lot about a lot of different things here throughout the course of the last podcast. We thank you for joining us here again. But yeah, to get back to the Celtics here, because you have to return to this current crop of Celtics. You've been there since the development of Brad Stevens. He's just a wonder boy genius at this point. But what specific areas has he gotten really better in your point of view to make him into the guy that he is now?
Interviews, much better. I give him, obviously, anybody that hears our show, I'm very proud of what that has turned into, and it's become, I think in a lot of ways the best thing that Brad does, because we have this relation. Like, he almost is now. There are times I have to rein him in because he's getting too giddy and having too much fun in our pregame thing, because it's a place he could finally sort of stretch his wings and be himself. But he was so, tight-lipped and just trying to answer everybody's question right at the start, and I realized it was tough for me. And here's a true story about Brad and how he changed. I've been doing the show with Doc for 9 years, and I thought it was one of the best things we had on radio in Boston was that show I did with Doc before the game, and because it was just, we just would hammer each other constantly for not, as I always said, it's hard to get two egos that size into one 10-minute segment before every game, but we found a way to make it work. So I'm going from that. And that's a show I could have shown up, we could have ad-libbed 10 minutes every night because it was Doc. But with Brad, it took me a little while to figure it out. The fourth game was Memphis when I went to 0-4. And that day was the Richie Incognito story. Okay, let me tell you, this is like live, turn down the air conditioner so that it doesn't make that loud noise. This is the fun of Skype. So you go into Memphis, that day was Richie Incognito all day on SportsCenter. Huge story, big significant sports story. It was about bullying. It was about locker room culture. It was all that stuff. Now with Doc for 9 years, when something happened in the world, a sports story, a news story, Richard Pryor died, you could, it was part of the show. It was just an inherent thing. So I get in with Brad that night in Memphis, and we're just talking about it. And I said, before we started, I said, now you know about the Richie Incognito thing. And he's like, no, what happened? And all of a sudden I realized, okay, this is an old Saturday Night Live sketch from when I was a kid about these people that didn't know that Kennedy had been killed. Like, the joke was, where were you when Kennedy was killed? They're like, what, did something happen? And I realized this is a guy who has been watching tape of under out of bounds plays and nothing else for the last, so I realized, okay, this is a different thing. And it took me a while to figure it out, that his personality is one thing. His pop culture, he was a normal guy like the rest of us until he went into coaching. So you could make an Austin Powers joke. He'll make like $1 billion, but there's a cutoff point. Like, his life stopped, and everything after that is just, side out of bounds plays and whatever. It's like, ask Gordon Hayward, by the way, he'll be, I'm sure, in this conversation or whatever, about these calls, how close they were. People ask me all the time, is Brad Stevens in the beginning, was he here just to go to college, to get another college job? Brad Stevens is in the exact spot he wanted to be in. Those calls with Gordon Hayward to check on Gordon and see how he was doing was 30 seconds of how are you doing, and then it was, hey, that out of bounds play you ran with a minute 35 to go when you had, the screener came off. That's what he was calling and talk about basketball, talk about plays and whatever. He's obsessed with it, and this is where he's wanted to be. But the most amazing thing, I didn't know how NBA players would respond to him. That's the one thing we didn't know. And I think they got such a kick out of his preparation, and above all else, treat people with, it's a good rule for the NBA. It's a good rule for life. You treat people with respect, and maybe in the world I just, was in the last 2 years in MMA, treat people with respect, you'll get respect back. And remember, that first team, it was a bad team, but it wasn't a young team. And that's the worst combination. Gerald Wallace was on that team, and Jeff Green was on that. There were veterans on that team. And that's the worst situation you can be in, is having a losing team with veteran players. And yet, he never lost their respect, even if they weren't good enough to win.
I'll never forget that game in Miami where Gerald Wallace chucked it to Gerald Green in the far corner there for the game winner at the buzzer. I mean, that was like one of the first moments where I was like, wow. I mean, maybe the Celtics really have something here with this Brad Stevens guy. I mean, I can tell you where I was when he was signed by Boston when the news broke. I remember where I was when that happened, and it was just like a weird, like nobody that came out of nowhere is a weird moment. And now you look at him now, and it's like, man, he just belonged right from the very second he figured it out on the jump. And as he's gotten better and as he's watched more tape and watched more coaches, like I always look at those moments where like pregame in San Antonio or whenever the Spurs come and visit the Celtics, like with Popovich, him and Popovich, I would just want to be a fly on the wall or a piece of gum on the bottom of the seat they're sitting in the arena. Like, I don't even care. I would just sit there and shut up and listen to those two guys talk basketball for days. I can't imagine what those conversations are like.
I'll tell you my favorite moment I've had with Brad, and this is the trust that I have with him on the show. It was a San Antonio game, and we finished the pregame, and I had this idea for a bit to get out of the show, but I needed Brad to do what he needed to do to make it funny, and I just had so much trust that he would get it. I just went into this thing at the end. I said, we talked about Pop, and I went into this long-winded question. I said, did you ever envision yourself as being the kind of guy who would sit in an interview situation and listen to a multi-tiered question that maybe had some run-on sentences and went on and took on different directions, and then maybe despite all that and the complexity of the situation would come back with some short one-word answer and walk away? He goes, no. Right out to commercial or whatever. And it's like I knew he'd get it.
Nailed it.
I knew he would understand. And those are the many faces of Brad. But yeah, listen to people. Listen to LeBron. Listen to other coaches. Listen to other players in the league. Listen to the respect that he has because he just knows what he's doing. He works hard. He has such respect for the game. And you know that first team. That team was 12-14. Remember, they were in first place. And how were they winning games that you had 80 or 90 possessions when they were so outmatched? He would MacGyver. Remember all the leads they lost? He'd MacGyver that team to a 16, 18-point lead. Then there was just way too much time and too many good players on the other side to hold them. But, it's been, an entirely positive experience. Unless you lose that first round to Chicago, and then life would have changed around here.
Yeah, Rondo doesn't get hurt, and we're in a different universe.
The Fire Brad chants on Twitter would be...
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. You have more time to relax, you should learn about this thing called HelloFresh because it's the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun so you can focus on the whole experience, not just the final plate. Each week, HelloFresh creates new delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions designed to take around 30 minutes so that everyone from novices like me to seasoned home-cooked chefs short on time, they can make tasty meals. HelloFresh sources the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantities needed, so there's no food waste, and they employ 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff to make sure each recipe is ensured and is nutritionally balanced. They deliver your food right to your doorstep in a recyclable insulated box, and they're now offering light spring meals and have just started to introduce the breakfast options. Now, loyal listeners of this show can get a very special offer because you are a loyal listener. You can go right online to HelloFresh.com, enter the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Again, support this particular broadcast by going to HelloFresh.com and typing in the code BEAT30. This Gordon Hayward thing, as you've kind of mentioned before, is just, the longer it goes on, the more steam it picks up. And it makes a lot of sense. Don't get me wrong. It makes a ton of sense from a basketball standpoint. From a monetary standpoint, you kind of have to figure out where you want to go. How, in your estimation here, Sean, how real is this?
I think it's real. It's certainly within the realm of, it's in the realm of conversation. In playing devil's advocate, when people were jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh my God, Gordon Hayward and Celtics is going to happen, whatever, I would say, well, who is Brad Stevens to Gordon Hayward in his life? Is he the most important person in his life? No. Is he the 8th most important person in his life? The 12th most important person in his life? Maybe. And I said, okay, think about who the 12th most important person in your life is. Would you give up $20 or $30 million for that, for that person to have that experience? Maybe you would, but maybe you wouldn't. And obviously not getting all NBA, that helps and it narrows the gap. My other devil's advocate thing on it, and I think Gordon Hayward is great, is that when it comes to Gordon Hayward or Jimmy Butler or Paul George or anybody that plays that position, Jay Crowder is an underrated player. And so the gap, it's you want to get into VORP and all the crazy stuff, but this is what I'm talking about. The improvement at that position by going from Jay Crowder to wherever. Whereas if you were to improve, I'm not saying you're going to get Anthony Davis, but to me, I would give anything. I'd go completely in every possible crazy direction if there was an Anthony Davis conversation, because look at the improvement in that spot on the floor versus, is Gordon Hayward a better player? Does he bring more to the table than Jay Crowder? You could discuss them in many different ways. And probably all those guys I mentioned, I think most people would vote that that's an upgrade on Jay Crowder. But how significant is it for what you're talking about? Who's a better bang for the buck? And are there better ways on your team and your roster to allocate your resources than to the small forward position, which has Jay Crowder and Jaylen Brown? That's how I'd phrase it.
So you make a great point, but I just think, you throw Gordon Hayward in Brad's system, where in Utah the offense wasn't stellar. If you can put Gordon Hayward in there, and who says you have to get rid of Jay Crowder if Gordon Hayward comes to the team? I mean, I think Jay Crowder is probably not going to play super heavy minutes at the 4, but I think Gordon Hayward would really thrive. Obviously, he's not an Anthony Davis talent, but I think you could still win a championship with Gordon Hayward as your second best player.
I think you can. I think a lot of these teams would absolutely you can in a non-Cleveland Golden State universe right now. You can win a championship, but that's what I'm saying. You can't let that psych you out. You still have to build the best possible team. And as I always say about the East, and I've always said for years, LeBron can always slip on a banana peel in the playoff series. You have to put yourself in position to be in position. And I don't think you just can't let yourself get psyched out by the very real gap right now between 2 and 3.
Yeah, and the other big storyline, as we'll kind of finish up here, the other big storyline of this offseason is what does Boston do with this number 1 overall pick. There's been so many, trades thrown out there. Paul George, Jimmy Butler. Could you make a super deal for Anthony Davis that I don't buy, but that's being thrown out there by somebody out there in Twitter world. But it's becoming a more, I think, popular decision to keep this pick. And it seems like with all the stuff that's going on, including Monday, where there was a photo shoot with Markelle Fultz, it looks like Danny is going to select Markelle, number 1 overall pick. Do you have any idea where they're going to go? Trade it, select Markelle, select somebody else? I know we talked about it during the stuff off camera or off recording. You're a big fan of Josh Jackson. Do you think they should go there, trade down and take Josh? Where are you at?
What's the trade there? What's the whatever you do on draft night doesn't mean that's how things are going to play out for when it's all said and done. First of all, what I've been saying a lot is that Danny that's a dangerous man picking at 21. You give him control of the board, and anything's possible. I'd also remember now, as we're talking, when I'm looking at the calendar here, 10, 11 days out, whatever it is, everything you hear, what's that thing you say? Listen, everything I say is a lie. Everything's a lie right now. Everything because there's not just your regular Twitter internet thing going on that can exist 365 days a year. Now you have deliberate misinformation being put out by teams. So in a way that kind of makes it fun, because certainly everything at this stage is possible. I think Danny is in a position right now to listen to everything. And we know who the Celtics like, and they certainly like Markelle. And they do like Josh Jackson as well, and there's guys at the top of the draft. What we don't know is who other teams really like. And, this is like the whole Lonzo ball, like all of a sudden the Lakers Magic goes on and says how much we love him, and then somebody gets in his ear. It's like, you can't say that before the draft. We need to confuse everybody. And so, all of a sudden they don't. And that's the game. But you don't know how much other teams, after you get through the workouts and they've done all the pre-draft stuff, does another team value somebody so much that maybe there's, conversation. It's another team falling in love with Markelle Fultz so much that they're ready to make a move that we're not even thinking about right now. And that's the beauty of having all the options on the table. Like, it's like Danny having when he gets to Chipotle and they have all the different trays and all the different options, and you have all these different things. I can go veggie today. I can go, let me get chicken with the vegetables, without white rice, brown rice. There's all these different options that he's going to have.
See, that's why I thought Danny would be more of a Moe's guy, because they have way more vegetables that you can get in customizable on your burritos. So I picked him $5 Monday.
No,
That's
we don't.
right.
Moe's is not even a sponsor. We're just throwing Moe's
Not
out
yet.
there. Nice.
But it's safe to say that you're not buying the Josh Jackson's been guaranteed a top 3 pick.
I don't buy anything anymore. I have a date on the calendar that once you get past that first week of June, I don't believe anything. It's just because it's the nature of it. And I think you want to look at that early stuff when people are, because people tend to be a little more truthful when there isn't as much information. Now people have their information, they know who they like, and so once they know who they like, they're not telling you, and everything's got to be about, you know, different directions and different ways to go. And let me think they like this guy, and I got to think they like this guy, and so that's. I think it makes it fun as a fan leading up to it, but you don't really get a great sense of it. I think Mark. Listen, if you're a betting man, Markel's that's the smart money at number one. But Danny's had some draft nights that have changed. You know, we had one 4 years ago that certainly changed the complexion of things.
Yeah, just
I kept saying over during the conference finals. I kept saying, you know, tonight the Celtics are, you know, they win Game 7, and tomorrow they'll, you know, tonight's Game 1, and last night they got the number 1 pick in the draft. That will never happen again. And I can't say that could happen next year.
Yeah.
I mean,
very well could.
That's
that
how amazing that the thing could exactly happen next year.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else? Zaire, we good?
Yeah, I just think that we have never been able to unanimously, I can't talk, say, okay, Danny Ainge is going to pick this guy, and it happens every year. Like we never know what he's going to do. And, you know, the fact that you see folks in a Celtics jersey, that's just another game. I just think the closer we get to this draft, yeah, it kind of makes sense to draft folks for what we need. But at the same time, I'm starting to not believe it's going to happen because Danny Ainge does what Danny Ainge does. So I agree on that end.
Well, you're a Lonzo guy, Zaire, right?
Yeah, I want Lonzo Ball really bad. You know,
you just want Lavar.
That's the guy that. Well, yeah, I mean, he's a show unto himself, but you know. But I just think that Lonzo Ball fits this team perfectly and seamlessly. I just think that you can plug him in different spots and he'll be very helpful. You know, with Markel, I think that what we need is his ability to score. But that's, to me, the only contribution that he'll give this team. I think Lonzo Ball can contribute in like 3 or 4 different ways, and I would rather have that.
I had no problem with Lonzo Ball, by the way. I think that it's really funny because every discussion gets to his father. When he's playing, we're not going to be talking about his father. We're talking about his father because there's nothing else to talk about. And I'm not a, you know, I was in the camp of it's just harmless, it's fun and whatever. And I'll tell you right now, guys, Christine Leahy is a friend of mine, and I thought that was so over the top and over the line, and he lost me on that. And I thought it was, you know, legitimately a turnoff. But I don't take 0.1% away from the kid or drafting him because his dad acts the way he acts. I think that's just, you know, it'll be a distraction. If that's a distraction, then your organization is not a strong one. If that distracts your organization.
Yeah, but right. The game only lasts 2 hours, so Lavar theoretically has a lot of time to have his.
But you know what? Here's the thing on that, and I saw something that Jim Jackson was saying on one show, and he was saying how, you know, you can look at LeVar Ball and what he's doing, but on the other side, you can look at what he's done as far as the productive side. He's raised kids that aren't getting in trouble. He's raised very good basketball players, and these guys are, you know, they're respectful. Like, you don't see Lonzo Ball cutting up. So, I mean, if LeVar Ball is cutting up, let him cut up. He's not a Celtic. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And once again, just as what Grande said, it's like if you have a guy in your organization who is going to mess it up, then your organization was probably messed up anyway.
All right. That'll do it for our special guest of what will be a 2-part episode. So if you catch part 1 or catch 2, make sure you get both of them in the same shot. But the play-by-play man for the Boston Celtics, you hear him on 98.5, the Sports Hub. You hear him on the Boston Celtics Radio Network. He's alongside Cedric Maxwell every night. He needs a better vantage point at the TD Garden. I'm sorry. I'm sick of watching you tweet pictures from the corner. That's insane. Get the guy a better spot on press row, please. That's Sean Grande. Sean, thank you so much for joining us here. Really appreciate the time, and enjoy your vacation, man. You definitely earned it.
I appreciate it, guys. This was fun.
Thanks
for the time, Sean.